A Santero, that's the name they give to the saint makers. So it's basically like saying saint maker in Spanish. Well, I'm having my own dialogue with the stylistic aspect of the classical Santeros. I don't know if I'm going to do straight saints in the way they did, but I'm kind of feel like I'm telling the story of the people in a way that is uniquely New Mexican. You got an image like this of the death cart here, and that's Doña Sebastiana and the Penitente Brotherhood would cart those, and they still do cart those around during their holy ceremonies, and often it was attached to them with these ropes that are made out of horsehair, and it would cut into them. So there's some suffering involved, but it's kind of a reminder that death is coming up on you. You know, you got all these kind of ideas, memento mori, you will die, so therefore, you know, you must be saved. You could look at just the Santero artwork that's being made in New Mexico and say, this work is following rules. But at the same time, I feel like you could look at and say, this work is rejecting the rules of everything they saw, and they have a kind of movement together where they are purposely abstracting the imagery. There's a looseness and an improvisation that I don't have in my work. But the old Santeros, they're doing it just flowing, improvise, and doing these zigzag wiggly lines, and it's like, wow, I want to bring some of that into my work. I think they definitely took pride in the stylization and abstraction that they were doing because they did it over and over and over. In the career of someone like Jose Rafael, you could find over 1,000 pieces, and he's doing this very simplified versions of these pieces because possibly he enjoyed what that looked like, but also you need to whip these things out quick if you're going to get them spread out across the community, as well as the influence from what the Pueblo people were doing. I think you're trying to Christianize that community as well, and they're not used to seeing oil paintings, and they might have saw them and not been as impressed and not relatable. You can kind of feel like some of that and the colors. They might have traded for these pigments with the native people, but you definitely get a sense of a dialogue going on, and that dialogue wouldn't just be culturally, it would also be in the DNA, you know. So these people were living very intimately at that point in time. We're talking about 1800, 1820s. So I think it's a uniquely New Mexican thing because it's not even something that you see in Mexico City. It's very unique to this region here. So in some way, I feel like I'm informing people outside of New Mexico of the things that are uniquely New Mexican. So I don't know if I'm serving the same spiritual functions as the original Santeros, but I'm definitely trying to have a dialogue with them in a way that we haven't seen before. I could make copies of all the old ones, and there's this one that I like that's a copy of a Moyeno, but to me, that's me doing an exercise. But for me, just to do a straight copy is like, what is the point in that? So can I evolve these themes and these concepts in a way that expresses who I am? Not just who my ancestors are, not just what the story of the land is, but also who am I and why do I feel like this is new and fresh? I'm kind of a man between worlds. Part of the artwork is very folk oriented, very Mexican. People will link me into the Chicano art scene, but there's always this love of graffiti and things. I grew up in Albuquerque. You know, people would talk to me about art and they say, oh, Georgia Keefe or somebody I don't know. You know, and I'm like, yo, you know this person? It's like, no, I know Giant One who did a piece down on Central. It's badass. I know MC Rock, you know, I know the graffiti that's going down, you know, and that's what I cared about. So seeing the Southwest landscapes and things like that wasn't my reality growing up. It wasn't until years later that I was able to look at this stuff and have an appreciation. I don't know if it's about getting older or what, but part of the theme of my artwork that has stayed consistent is this kind of wandering and embracing the mystery. You could look at the cave paintings, and they were having like these spiritual relationships with the animals and rites of passage. And I think that's one of the earliest functions of art, is to try to come to terms with the unknown and death and things. And I look at all religious art as these are metaphors. I don't see this as a literal thing, and that's something I learned from Joseph Campbell early on. I didn't go to school to be an artist. I went to school and I studied religion and philosophy. And so some people might look at my image and go, that's about Catholicism, but honestly, I can not be Catholic and enjoy the imagery, not just because I grew up with it, but I see these are metaphors for the mystery. Nobody knows what's going to happen. So I like things that are outside the box, as well as the things that are inside the box and accepted. So just trying to not only find a balance between dimensional and flat things in one painting, but also like high art and folk art. Are they contradictory, or are they also part of the mystery that we're trying to find this common thread of who we are, and we're a little bit of this, we're a little bit of that. You could have a new metaphor, you could have a new religion, but at the end of the day, being reminded of your own mortality is something that you're going to have to come to terms with. And whether you get it through religion or you get it through something else, you have to come to terms with the idea that we will all die. And whether it's Day of the Dead, whether it's a retablo painting from New Mexico, all these things are meant to provide us that comfort and hopefully get us to be able to live a good, strong life that we're proud of.